Last year, not a single Korean film reached the 10 million viewer mark. But with the beginning of the new year, movie theaters are once again welcoming a lineup of highly anticipated releases, from big budget productions to ambitious mid and low budget projects as well. Today, we'll take a closer look at what lies ahead for the industry in 2026 with film critic Pierce Conran, who is now connected with us. Hello, Pierce.
Hello, Pierce.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Now, first and foremost, how would you describe the overall mood in Korean cinema at the beginning of this year?
Well, I have to be honest, it's not great. It's obviously quite negative. People are quite pessimistic at the moment. The numbers have been very challenging for years now, since the onset of the pandemic, of course. But then, unlike other markets which have had somewhat robust recoveries over the past few years, Korea has found that to be a bit of a challenge. Things were on the upswing, and then we had, I think, in 2024, we had 71 million tickets sold to local films, which was quite encouraging. But then last year, that dropped to 43, which is a huge drop, and that's compared to the last year before the pandemic, last full year before the pandemic, 2019, which had 116 million tickets for local films. So we're barely over a third of that, and this is very challenging. And so this is because of streaming, obviously, for a few years. It's because the people are not coming back to theaters. There's also just the challenge to the industry being posed by AI. And a lot of people are just very, very concerned about their futures. There are companies that are disappearing. A lot of people I speak to know have colleagues who have just moved away from the film industry entirely, and this is quite normal to be hearing these days. However, these numbers don't tell the full story, because there is a bit of a silver lining in that there have been a number of films that have reach profitability, and that's because they've had lower costs and thus lower break-even points. And this is kind of a trend we're seeing now of films that are kind of being made, smaller films that are being made that are finding an easier path to profitability. So films like My Daughter's a Zombie last year, or even Park Chan-wook's No Other Choice, The Match, Noise, The Ugly. These are all films that had an easier going of getting to that break-even point.
Mm-hmm. And then let's look a little bit at the early box office numbers, which show that romance films are doing pretty good, like Once We Were Us and Even If This Love Disappears Tonight, one of my favorites. So why do you think our romance movie is currently resonating so well with the audience?
I mean, having romance films do well in Korean cinema is certainly nothing new. You go back to the 90s, the 2000s, films like Contact, Promise, My Sassy Girl. These have long been the backbone of the industry, and these are films that are not very expensive to produce. They have, relatively small casts, obviously requiring two main stars to prop them up, and these are kind of familiar and relatable stories. And romance films have always been made. Why are these two doing so well in particular? I would say it's just down to the films themselves. People have been responding to these viewers. These are more modest productions, but they struck a chord with viewers rather than open big on the back of big effects and big stars. They have kind of modest openings at the box office, but then the audiences that do go out for them are impressed, they're touched, and they talk to their friends, they talk to their family, they talk about it online, and then suddenly these films kind of stick around for weeks and weeks, and they have they don't drop off very much, and they find a very steady path to profitability, and this is very encouraging. So it's the films themselves that are speaking to the audience.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. And The King's Warden, set for release in early February, tells the story of King Danjong and the people he meets during his exile. It's already being actually mentioned as a potential 10 million viewer contender this year. What do you think could draw audiences in, and do you see a blockbuster potential?
Well, I was fortunate to see this film a few days ago. I enjoyed it very much. And this, of course, is so it's a period drama about, of course, King Danjong, a deposed king in the 15th century who was exiled, sent to a remote village where he kind of strikes up a friendship with the wily village chief played by Yoo Hae-jin, who was one of the few stars who has maintained his box office power even in the pandemic era. He was in Yadang the Snitch last year, one of the few big hits, relatively big hits last year. So having his presence there is encouraging. The quality of the film kind of speaks for itself. I think this is very much targeted at family audiences, which is, of course, is important for a holiday period. It has comedy, it has drama, it has thrills, and it's a really quite an appealing package. It has I'm curious how people will respond to it because it has a somewhat unusual conclusion, shall we say, but people who know about the story before going into it will be aware of that. So I wonder how many people are fully aware of what the whole story is. Will it hit 10 million? I think it's kind of a fool's errand to predict that anything can hit 10 million these days. Not that it can't happen, but I certainly think it will easily pass its break-even point, which is 2.6 million viewers, I believe. So and I do think it's going to do well. Now, of course, this Lunar New Year, it's not the only film being released, and in years past, that was normal to have several big films contending for the large holiday audiences, whether Lunar New Year or summer holidays or Chuseok. But from the last couple of years, there have been very few big films coming out for these holidays, and people don't feel that the market has a space for two films to perform well. But now we have the King's Award, and we also have Human, this new action spy thriller from Ri Sung-wan. This looks like a pretty kind of high octane and fun, enjoyable thriller with Jo In-sung in the lead, very popular big name. However, it is a bigger film. It costs, or rather, the break-even point for that will be 4 million viewers, so that'll be a bit more challenging for that. But the industry is very keen to see if not one but two films, two big films, can find their way to profitability this year.
And we are keen to watch those as well. Now, Pierce, let's talk about Project Y, which was recently released. And this one drew early attention by winning the Best Film Award at the 10th London East Asia Film Festival. So what are your thoughts on Korean films' recognition in overseas markets?
I think that foreign viewers may be surprised to learn that Korean films are struggling so much domestically because they've never been so visible internationally. Project Y certainly is an example of that. After its premiere at Busan, it is being kind of received well at some festivals, and with thanks to Han So-gi and Jung Jun-so, the stars of the film, very well known internationally, one expects that it will kind of keep garnering a response internationally. But there have been a lot of other films in the last year that have been prominent overseas. Of course, Park Chan-wook's No Other Choice, following its debut at the Venice Film Festival, has been very, very prominent on the awards circuits in North America. It got 3 nominations at the Golden Globes, dozens of other nominations from other critics groups, and so forth. It's also been, now it's in theaters in America. It's doing very well. It's getting close to $10 million in America, which is really very rare for a foreign language film to achieve in America, so that's very encouraging, and that's in addition to strong box office returns in countries like the UK and Italy. The film, which actually wasn't that cheap to produce, was able to pass its break-even point even before it opened in theaters in Korea, thanks to all its strong foreign pre-sales. And there are lots of other films. Yoon Ga-eun's indie film The World of Love, after premiering at Toronto last year, terrific film, great response in festivals, great response in Korea, where it's been a rare hit as an indie film, and has just opened in Hong Kong, I believe, theatrically, and I think will continue to play around for months. But even, Netflix as well. We've got The Great Flood, which has been performing extremely well since its Christmas opening last year. It now has 81 million viewers on Netflix, and that's the 7th most viewed foreign language title on Netflix. So quite a range of films still doing well internationally, if not always at home.
That is good to hear. Now, Pierce, we have time for one more question. It's going to be a kind of combination here. So are there any other films to look out for in the rest of the year? And do you think there is a chance to achieve the 10 million admission mark this year?
To the 10 million mark points, I would say I kind of hope that the sort of obsession with hitting the 10 million mark will disappear because I think it's an unrealistic benchmark. We've been lucky to see a lot of films pass that, but for that to happen these days, it's not a guarantee and it doesn't need to happen. Films are going to be produced on lower scales, I think, in the future and won't need to come anywhere close to that to make money. That said, there is one film this year that really needs to hit $10 million to make money, and that's Hope, the new film by Na Hong-jin, which is a very, very expensive production. Everyone's very excited for it. We all love Na Hong-jin. We're very curious about what he's done. It's a big sci-fi film set in Korea. It has a Hwang Jung-min, local star, and Hoyeon, but it also has Hollywood stars like Michael Fassbender and Alicia Vikander. But it costs apparently an obscene amount of money, and for it to make money, it will really need to do extremely well. And it's looking at everyone else kind of, reining in their costs. This one kind of really stands out as an outlier as being far more expensive than other films being made right now. I hope it does well. I certainly am very excited to see it, but it's going to be really challenging for that. There are other films, of course. There's Assassins, which is a new film about an assassination attempt on Park Chung-hee in 1974. Which I expect will hope to replicate the success of films like 12/12 The Day. It features Yoo Hae-jin again, also Lee Min-ho and Park Hae-il. Quite looking forward to that. It's also Lee Chang-dong's film Possible Love. Now that's a Netflix title, so it won't be in theaters, but I expect we'll see it at the Venice Film Festival later this year. And that's something that a lot of people are very, very excited to check out later this year.
All right, Pierce. Well, listening from what we hear from you, we are also getting more excitement for this year in Korean cinema. So let's do hope that we're going to see some revitalization in 2026. Thank you very much for connecting with us today.
Thank you, Pierce.
Thanks very much for having me. I certainly hope it'll be a good year for Korean cinema.
Thank you. And thank you, Walter. As always, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.